Welcome to Enigma Cast Nerds, and I tell you what, if I was going to have a paid section, you get to see the first 15 minutes of this conversation, but I tell you what, I don't have it. So what you do is this is where you get right now. Because I have called in, finally ran down the two of my hotties, New Zealand, Australia, Kiwis, Juliet and Lisa from the Cryptid Women's Society. Introduce yourself, ladies.
Hello. I'm Juliet. I'm from Melbourne, and I'm one half of Cryptid Women's Society.
And I am the other half of the Cryptid Women's Society. My name is Lisa, and I live in Wellington, New Zealand. And together we are Cryptid Women's Society.
The Cryptid Women's Society Enigmites. They've been on the channel before. I want to say it was like episode maybe like 8. I'll put a link in here or whatever, whatnot. Two of the smartest women I've ever met when it comes to the weird and the strange. And that's saying something, y'all, because I know a lot of women. so, two of the smartest, two of the funniest, two of the there's a saying I heard, your weird matches my weird. These two girls, their weird matches my weird. They are absolutely amazing. They are actually big timers. Doing me a favor coming on the show. Where to find them will, as always, be in the description below. When they are not out running the farm or making videos or dominating, they are actually part-time hit women for the Soviet Union, right? So, I don't want to say they're La Femme Nikitas, but they're La Femme Nikitas. Anyways, two killers, Juliet and Lisa.
Semi-accurate.
Very accurate.
We can't talk about it.
Can't talk about it. So look, if you hear a knock at your door and the next word you hear is, "We're here to have a wee looky," you're going to be dead in about 45 seconds, right? That will be the last words you hear, is "We're here to have a wee looky."
Oh my God, you give me so much shit, and I'm going to get you back.
Oh, I love it though, man. I use that at work now. Let me have a wee looky at that. Bring that over here.
Oh, look at that over there.
A wee looky over here. Anyways, back to our regular schedule of broadcast. Julia and Lisa are joining us from the Southern Hemisphere. And tonight we're going to talk about something that is actually taken off in my realm. We're going to get into the Dogman, everybody. And you might not know this, but the Dogman phenomenon is not specific to Northern America. And I brought on two Dogman experts to fill us in on the story on that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. 100% right. It's certainly not just America. Yeah. And the more you look into it, the more you find that there are encounters all over the world, including New Zealand and Australia. And we've got a few of those to share with you today.
I'm all ears.
Yeah, and it goes way, there's like this whole theory that the Beast of Bray Road, we all know the Beast of Bray Road, it's like one of the first ones in America. That's when the first werewolf apparently was seen as like, oh, no, this is, you've got to look into the medieval side of stuff. It just goes back for thousands of years.
And we're talking like going back through Aboriginal folklore and culture and all of this sort of stuff as well, and it goes right back to the South Pacific Polynesian cultures where they talk about Ku, the god of war, or the dog god of war. So there's a whole heap of that sort of cultural intertwining stories and legendary and bits and pieces, mythology around it as well. So it's cool.
No, it is really cool. It's a fascinating topic. I only found out about the Dogman about a little bit over a year ago to get into it, and then I'm actually shocked about how prevalent it is, and it's spread across. And I'll share some notes too when I get rolling on this. But all right, man, I might get scared here. I might have to turn the lights off here when I get going into it.
Even I said to Lisa yesterday, I said, I've found a couple of stories and stuff that I was literally listening while I was listening to this podcast of this woman talking about this encounter of how these, it was one Dogman in particular, but there was a pack of them, and how they terrorized her family. And it went on for nearly a year. And honestly, the hair on the back of my neck went up, or like on some of the things that she was talking. You could literally hear it in her voice, and I'm just like, man, that's some scary stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean,
and the thing that Juliet and I talked about after that was how the media and pop culture and stuff has changed our view on what these creatures are. You look at Bigfoot, you look at Dogman. Well, a werewolf is just a poor guy who's turning into a wolf man at the change of every moon cycle or whatever, and he doesn't want to be a werewolf, and we should back. Like, the real stories coming out are terrifying.
Yeah.
You know, these people are being stalked, and some of them are disappearing altogether. And I think like the media and Hollywood and that sort of stuff have totally diluted, or I don't know, Disneyfied. You know,
glamorized them as well, but they've definitely glamorized. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was funny because I did a live last night, and one of the questions I answered was, is there ever a story of a friendly Dogman? I'm like, no, they're all assholes.
Yeah.
I've never the stories that I've heard along the way, I've never heard of any. Oh, look how cute a Dogman. Some people tell you stories about people getting lost in the woods, and like a hairy man or a Bigfoot took care of them, guided them, got them in. You get lost in the woods and a Dogman find you, your lunch. All right, so just know that right now.
And that's the kind of like, that's the one thing that goes over, isn't it? All the stories that you read about, all the encounters of they see these things, and if they get close enough where they can look in their eyes, the intelligence that these people see in these creatures, and just that kind of knowing I can tear you to freaking pieces if I want to, but I'm deciding not to do that now. So you're lucky type thing. So
Wow. Yeah. Okay, I'm terrified. So all right.
Yeah.
and the thing too, I got to when I hear these type of stories, not only does the word, so it also says they see an intelligence in their eyes, and the most common thing is they say that I know that the malice coming off of these things, that just the hate that's coming off them, right? And I was like, man, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is pure hate, isn't it? That was one of the big things that they were saying, is like the anger, the hatred towards them as basically being, you are nothing.
Yeah.
And just
at the same time, I like some of the stories, and I have a really great story from one of our friends just down the road from our house, who's one of the members of Cryptid Women's Society, and she shared one of her stories as one of our first stories that we ever received, and we were both blown away because it was about seeing Dogman in Wellington here, and she was, her encounter wasn't super scary, she wasn't super afraid, but she was very much like, I think I don't need to be going after this guy. So maybe it's similar to, you get stories of Yowies and of Bigfoot and that sort of stuff where they're going about their business and you see them stumble across where they are and you're able to leave without having that really kind of like that feeling of dread and that feeling of you need to leave now, that sort of thing. And then you do get those encounters where people are just absolutely terrified because they've been made to feel that they need to leave now, or certain doom will, cover them.
For sure, yeah. So I'm ready for some stories. What do y'all got for me? What do you got?
All right, Lisa, do you want to start? You're at the bottom of the world. Let's start with you and work our way up.
I'm at the bottom of the world. I have got a big story. It's a really well-known story, and it's one of the stories that we shared on our Werewolf Live a while ago, but I thought it would just be really awesome to kind of go back through that and get your thoughts on it, Joe, as well, because Juliet and I know it quite well. And it's really interesting, and there's a whole heap of connections with Bigfoot, Yowies, that sort of stuff as well. So super interesting. So let me just kind of jump straight on in. So this is actually a story from a guy called John Kershaw. Feel free to stop me at any time and jump in and we'll talk about it, eh? So John Kershaw was 32. This only happened a couple of years ago, I think 2019 off the top ahead or somewhere around there, so not long ago. He was 32 when it happened, and he was living in Sydney, Australia. He was a construction worker, so he works with big buildings and that sort of stuff, and he used to train racehorses. And these two things are really important because it kind of shows you the kind of person that he is, and when these things start happening, how he should have responded, and what sort of other things were stopping him from, or obstacles were stopping him from responding correctly. So he's had recent encounters with Yowies when this Dogman encounter happened. So basically his history goes like this, and this was something that I found afterwards. I was like, oh, there's a connection here. I heard the original story of his Dogman encounter, and then I found out that in fact he'd had encounters when he was younger. And I think this is quite a system and quite often you hear from people that have had Yowie encounters or Bigfoot encounters. It's not just a one-off. They've had encounters previous when they were younger, or they've had UFO encounters, or they've had other supernatural encounters of these sort of beings, if you want to call them beings versus creatures, you know, wherever your perspective sits. So I thought this was really, really important. So his history is John had an encounter when he was about 4 or 5 years old. However, he said he literally had forgotten about it. After this most recent encounter, he was telling his dad, and his dad reminded him of what had happened when he was little. And John was like, far out. It's like a switch flicked in his mind, and all of a sudden these memories came back from when he was 4 or 5. It was literally like he had, what do they call them? A memory curtain, right?
Yeah.
When abductees and that sort of stuff have memories.
Yeah, repressed memories come back.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. And they know something has happened, but their memory is, I just fell asleep, or I just did this, and slowly that memory, what do you call it? A memory, I can't quite remember, but there's a specific name for it. But he basically said this encounter came back clear as day. A screen memory. Screen memory is what it's called. So he said when he was little, he woke up in the middle of the night because he heard something outside his window. He said his dad would get up around 2 a.m. in the morning because he worked as a milkman, so they'd get up early and do their morning runs. John said he got out of bed and he pulled the blinds from his window to see the head of a dog with its paws leaning on the window, looking straight at him. He could see its eyes. He said he screamed and he ran into his dad's room, who was already awake getting ready for work. John said, there's a police dog at the window, 4 or 5-year-old's brain. Dad said, oh, it's nothing, go to sleep. About 5 minutes later, some pot plants started getting smashed outside the window. And that's when Dad jumped up and went outside to find that there was nothing there except for broken flower pots and pot plants. He said he couldn't tell if it was bent over because it was super dark outside, but he does remember seeing its eyes and it blinking at him.
Wow.
So he obviously saw the shape of a German shepherd, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of stories of dogmen come back with they can see the eyes. Mm-hmm. I think that's something really common, eh? So I thought that was really, really interesting to go, oh, wow, so this memory screen that was put in place was basically lifted with his next contact when he was a grown-up.
Wow. No, that is pretty amazing right there. And I'm sitting here just processing that in my head. Like, how would I react as a grown man? If I open up the window,
as a grown man, head,
the dog head sitting there looking into it. And then it makes me think too is like the way that his dad is kind of like just played it off until the pots came down, and then had the memories come back later. So something happened. So something, he just didn't remember that, right? You're telling me something happened and made him remember it. Okay.
So he had this recent encounter and he went back to tell his dad about this crazy encounter that he's just had. And his dad went, oh yeah, remember when you were little, you had this encounter? And he went, holy crap, I did.
Yeah.
And he said, literally came flooding back. Have you guys ever had something happen like that where all of a sudden you had this real clear memory come back?
Yeah. Like deja vu, kind of almost like a deja vu, but suddenly like, oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, so I've had that, right? And it's going to sound real weird, but I'll tell you about it real quick because it's freaking interesting. So when I was a little girl, I was really small. I was like the size of a doll when I was a baby. So my mum used to dress me in doll's clothes. She could literally do that with her hands, and my legs would fit through her fingers. So she was so incredibly tiny. And up until I think, when I was 12 and I was doing judo, I was fighting under 30 kilos, right? I was tiny. Right. I've got a medal under 30 kilos. And I was like, yeah. I was tiny, whiny person, yeah. So I remember, and I didn't remember this until something happened. I can't remember what that something was, but all of a sudden I had this immediate clear memory of when I was about 4 years old, 5 years old, when we'd just moved to a new house, and I went outside and flew because it was a windy day, and I jumped in the air and I could fly through my backyard. It sounds fucked up, right? 100%. Even in my brain, I'm like, that's screwed. That's not normal. But I have clear memories, and all of a sudden I went, oh yeah, that's right, I could do that. And so I spoke to my dad about it. I was like, hey Dad, what do you reckon? And he goes, oh, strangely enough that you say that, I was your age, or 5 or 6. I could do that when I fell asleep. I'd make myself fall asleep, and then in my mind, if I went fast enough upwards, I could get through the ceiling, and if I could do that, then I was away laughing and I could fly wherever I wanted to go. He said, I can remember it clear as day. I was like, huh.
So it's almost like an astro travel kind of thing, isn't it? Like an out-of-body experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So in my memory that came back, I was outside my house. That was a real physical thing. I can remember physically being in the air. But for him, he knew that if he would go to bed at a certain time and he would put himself to sleep, like make himself physically go to sleep, and then if he flew hard enough, he could go through the ceiling, but only if he flew hard enough and fast enough to get out of his body, essentially. Yeah. Anyway, there we go.
Astral projection. We got it all here, folks. And just for the record, that's not the strangest thing I've ever heard her say.
15 minutes earlier.
Yeah, 15 minutes earlier.
Should have been here for the pre-show.
Should have been here for the pre-show. The VIP show.
Oh, gosh. Nah, but yeah, crazy, yeah. And I kind of think to myself, when you get into these sort of businesses or these sort of environments that we're in, doing the jobs that we're doing, you got to have some sort of connection to something, Juliet's very well connected to the paranormal and that sort of stuff. I see UFOs a lot. I don't know about you, Joe. You see wolves in the shower, so it's just weird.
Exactly. Right? Wolves in the shower. Just believe it.
Ask him about that later.
That's in post-production.
Dungeon talk.
Ay.
That's the paid version, everyone. Okay.
All right. Moving along.
Okay, so let me tell you about his recent encounter. So John's recent encounter. And in fact, there's 2 parts of this. So I'm going to zoom through this. Feel free to stop me if you want to ask any questions. So John had a Yowie encounter when he was fishing in the early dawn. So he decided to start fishing during daytime hours. That was the first kind of, hang on a second, you had a Yowie encounter? I don't know what happened in that Yowie encounter, but it spooked him enough to go, I'm not going to go fishing during the dawn anymore. I'll do it during the daytime, safer, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. So this day, he said, and this is from his interview and him talking, right? So he said this day started really weird. First, he realized that he'd forgotten to take his wallet when he went to get a coffee on his way to the river. In Australia, you have to have your fishing license with you, or you'll get fined like $1,000 if you're caught fishing without having your license. So it's a really important thing. It's one of those things that you make sure you take with you on those days, right? So he went home to get it. Then he showed up to his spot that he goes fishing, And he said he'd already been there 3 times that week. And today the gate was, he'd been there 3 times this week and the gate was always unlocked because the rangers come round and unlock them in the mornings. He said this time it was locked. He was like, that's weird. Why hasn't the ranger come round to unlock the gate? So he goes, okay, that's cool. He'll go to this new spot about 5 minutes down the road. This is where his father-in-law told him about where he used to go as a kid. So he goes, okay, sweet as, I'll go down here. He goes, the gate was unlocked, which in itself was weird because the rangers lock each gate as they go around and then unlock them. So he was kind of like, what is going on? This one's unlocked, but the normal one, the really popular one's locked. And he was kind of like, okay, that's all right. Brush it off. Yes, bro, she'll be right. We'll just keep on going, right? He goes, it started to get a bit weirder. He said on the playlist on Spotify, it started getting locked into a loop, right? So his music glitched out and started playing a song that he'd never heard before, and it went straight to the chorus. You know this is a bad idea.
I'm turning around. 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 I'm leaving.
He goes, and then it glitched back to the song that he was listening to.
No.
Oh, fuck that. Yeah, I'd be out real quick.
I'm leaving. Wow. Okay, hold on.
So
hold on.
That's the start.
Hold on. Okay. Okay. Gets up, forgets his wallet, needs his fishing license, go back, get the fishing license, heads down to his spot. Red flag number 1, gate's locked. Then he says, you know what? That's never happened before, but it's okay. I'm just going to head on down the street and I'll go to my second spot. Now you're telling me that on the way, the radio glitches out and it starts playing a song that telling him basically this is a bad idea, turn around, don't go. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
A song that he has never heard before, and then it glitches back to his song.
Yeah.
He was listening to originally.
All right. All right.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. All right.
And honestly, the first time I heard this, I was literally doing the same thing. I was like, you're not listening.
Yeah, no. Turn around.
You're being told. Yeah. So it keeps going, right? Keeps going. He said he got all the way to the river with his gear. So he was going on a kayak. So he's going kayak fishing into this river, right? So he got all the way to the river with his gear, kayak and all that. He realized he'd forgotten his GoPro. And it took him 30 minutes to get back down from the river, right? So he walked his way all the way back. So I've written notes in here that says this guy is in construction. He never forgets things. He lays things out really systematically. So he's got all of his equipment to go, like you don't want to get up to, 60 floor high building and realize you've forgotten your hammer or your tape measure or whatever. You make sure your shit's ready, right?
Right.
And he said he's done this numerous times. He's an avid kayak fisherman. He knows what he's doing, and he always makes sure he packs everything together. So he was just like, things were just really off and really strange.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he goes, things were starting, started off weird, it got weirder, continued down the path, should have listened to the universe. Did not listen, right?
Sure.
Slapping you in the face with a jandal, but that's all right. So, he said once he got into the water, he noticed how incredibly clear it was and how many fish were there. He said every time he put his line in, he had 5 or 6 fish trying to get on his line. He said, which is just really weird. He hasn't been to this spot before. This was where his father-in-law used to go when he was a young man. So he said it was literally like this little oasis. He was pulling fish in left, right, and centre. And he said, and it was amazing. He said, all of a sudden, he saw a shot of grey in the bush to his right-hand side. He brushed it off, thinking it was probably the sun's glare, right?
Mm-hmm.
To the left side of the river, the cockatoos were going absolutely mental in the trees. Again, he brushed it off because that's what cockatoos do, right? They're super loud. These white parrots. Do you know what a cockatoo is?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, yeah. So super loud, super like boisterous and sassy and like always going for it, right? So he was like, sure, whatever. He spotted a big rock in the water to his right, and so he decided that he'll paddle over there, and there's definitely big fish over there, right, surrounding this giant rock. So he paddled on over, and he said he was having the best time ever. He said he'd never fished like this before. There was just fish everywhere. It was this crazy oasis. He said, so he made this long cast to the right, and as it hit the water, a creature in the tree line started screaming and running through the bush towards him.
Oh, no.
It was smashing branches out of the way. It was screaming and roaring as loud as it could. He said he could hear its heavy footsteps running towards him, breaking branches, and could see it pushing trees and bush out of the way. It stopped just before John could see it, just in the tree line, and it started howling and roaring at him. He said he had hooked a fish, so he reeled it in as fast as he could, threw the fish back into the water. As he did, he didn't keep the fish. He was catching them and putting them back in. And he said at that moment, shit went up a level.
Wow. Okay.
Which is very Australian, right?
Yeah.
He said this creature started howling and roaring crazy, and the cockatoos went absolutely ballistic. John decided he'd turn around, and he went back to the car and pretend like it didn't happen, right? So he turned his kayak around, and he heard a voice in his head, "Go now or you will die."
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh,
You ever see those?
Right.
You ever see the? Pause that for a second. You ever see those movies where the white people go into a place and it's clearly bad and somebody's going to die? I'm not that white guy. I hear one verse leave. I'm leaving. You understand? Don't go there. Okay, I won't.
Like, I can go out to the bush all by myself. You're like, no.
Nope. I'm leaving. Wow.
Yeah. Pretty crazy, eh? So he's getting this telepathic messages going on, and that's twice now in one day, one morning. So, yeah. He paddled off trying to be calm, right? He was like, just be calm. We know we don't agitate the wildlife. We're not sure what it was. So just be calm. And I think initially he thought it was a yowie, right? Because he'd had this yowie encounter previously that made him start fishing during the daytime. So he says, I got down about 50 meters down the river back towards the car, and everything stopped. Goes like, no more noise, not even a twig snap. So from the cockatoos going crazy to all of these like howling and roaring and all this sort of stuff, he paddles 50 meters towards the car and everything goes quiet. He said he dragged his kayak out of the water and he leaned his rods up against a rock so that he could get everything out of the water. And at the same time, a rock flew past him, hit the rods and made the rods fall over. He then realized something threw a rock at him, and he also realized that he had another 30-minute bushwalk to get back to the car.
Yeah.
Basically, he was shitting himself. He threw his kayak on his shoulder so that he could hear if something was following him through the bush. Essentially, he ran his ass back to his ute, jumped in, and sat in his car, in his ute, for 1.5 hours to pull himself together before driving home. Absolutely shitting himself. He said he realized then that he had his GoPro running the whole time, and he had probably caught some sort of audio of the creature and the cockatoos going mental. He thought it was a yowie, but 3 days later he had his second encounter.
More. What?
More.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And this is what I mean, right? It's massive. It's not just I saw Dogman running around and he disappeared, or I saw this. This is over a week or so of encounters, and it's pretty full on. And I think it flows into Juliet's story pretty amazing as far as kind of having that longer encounter goes.
Yeah.
Pretty mental, eh?
No.
So,
Yes.
Encounter number 2. Are you ready?
Yes.
He doesn't look ready. He's like, okay.
Yes.
Let's look like
Before you do that, I got to tell you, I had a conversation with my buddy Tommy from the UK. He's from Poole, UK, and he was telling me a story about an encounter that kind of happened to him. And then that story that you just triggered, I'll tell you what, man, like, You got to be built different in the UK and Australia and New Zealand to be cryptid hunters, right? Because I don't know if you ever seen Americans go into the woods here. We look like Navy SEALs. We got night vision. We're in there 4 or 5 deep. You guys are down there with a stick and a can-do attitude, man. I'm thinking like, I'm not going in there. It's like, no.
It's my little torch. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. My little torch, right? Yeah. Man, that would be like, wow. Okay, I'm ready now. I'm ready.
Yeah. But we really do, right? Especially Australians. Oh no, and New Zealanders, we're very much just like, it's probably nothing. It'll be fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
That was in a ton fire. It's fine.
That's the third rock that got thrown at me this week.
Try and hit me. Try and hit me, and then I'll have issues.
Exactly right. Dang.
You missed.
I mean, Lisa was saying, wouldn't it be funny? We'd be out Bigfoot hunting and then throw a rock for you, mate. Just throw it back. Boom.
Yeah, boom. Right?
What would happen?
That was literally one of our questions, right? We were like, has anyone ever thrown a stock back at them? I mean, seriously, if some dude threw something at me, I'd be like, fuck you!
Yeah.
I'd be throwing it straight back.
Right?
And this is how people disappear in the bush.
Exactly.
They threw the
They throw the rock back. Those are the ones we never hear from, right? Oh my Lord, yeah.
So if we ever disappear, you'll know what happened. Oh wow, threw the rock back.
I'll lead an expedition there to look for your bodies, and all I'll see is the footprints where you guys struck the pose. I'm like, yeah, right here's where they threw it. Right.
That's the trajectory.
That's the trajectory. Go that way.
That's what happened. Be like, Joe, we carved out a little message on a piece of bark for you.
Yeah, exactly.
You're our favorite.
Yeah, and they're finding it, right? Yeah. And I'll get killed by like, I'll probably go in looking for you and get killed by like a beaver, an Australian beaver or something that's like, something that should never exist.
We can go into what type of beaver you're talking about, but we won't go.
Right? Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, that's what I end up what that does me in down there. Yeah.
Well, that's an extra 20 minutes right there.
Right there.
And again, it's in the paid version.
It's in the pay-per-view. That's the pay-per-view version.
Pay-per-view.
Wow. Oh, okay. Oh gosh, crying eyes. Okay.
This is why our contracts only let us come together every 6 months. Right here. This is the reason. Right here. Right. Has to be 6 months off between the episodes. All right. So, sorry.
Okay. Oh my God. Could you imagine when we all get together, right? I feel sorry for anyone that's around us at that time.
We'll have to have security for sure.
Yeah, probably like apology letters just to hand out. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Beforehand, right? Beforehand.
Printed.
Sorry
about that.
Sorry.
I'm not sorry.
Oh gosh. Okay. Are you guys ready for encounter number 2?
Yes.
Yeah, do it.
All right. So 3 days later, he had encounter number 2, right? So he went over, he went to another spot for fishing, right? Opposite direction. He was like, screw this. There's no way I'm going back there. Not a chance, right? So he went 1.5 Ks in the opposite direction. He was like, sweet as.
Like for a start, that's not just going away from, from the area. I mean, I'd be like 50 miles away from that spot, not 1.5.
A river is a river, right? And when you're fishing is fishing. Like you got rapids, there's no fish in there, so you've got to find a good spot. But a K and a half away is what, like a 10-15 minute walk?
Yeah.
Probably a 15-minute walk away, right? So, 10-minute drive down the road. That's probably enough distance to get away from whatever the hell's happening up there. But what he figured was, she was like, oh, no. No. But what he figured was, he goes, it's a residential area, right? It was built up, heavily populated location compared to what it was back there was super rural. So it was like there was houses that were backing onto the river and loads of people around. We'll be safe. It's not a rural environment. It's suburbia, sweet, residential. We'll be all good. I'll just plod on down through here on my kayak, right? So, pardon me, and I've just written in here something like, this is interesting. This is interesting. Is it?
But can't you remember why it's interesting?
Note to self.
Right, yeah, this is interesting. More and more people are having encounters with Dogman in built-up residential areas instead of the old narrative that they had to be wild or in dense bushland. And I think there was a couple of other stories that we talked about where there were Dogman sightings and Beast of Bray Road and that sort of stuff, which was in, residential areas, built-up suburbia sort of space versus sitting in, rural bushland. So that was why it was interesting. Oh, how interesting, Lisa. Thank you.
No, I'm actually like you got, and my mind goes right to. Yeah, these things. They're not scared of us. Like no, like so if they're coming into so like before you continue. Okay, so that could have been like his like, hey, this is my hunting ground, those are my fish, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, get out of here, right? But then you're talking about them getting the more and more of the encounters taking place in areas where were more densely populated, and these guys are like, yeah, nah, we're not having that either, right? Like it's like they're like coming across, because if you hear some stories here in with the Bigfoot thing, is that people are starting to say that we're pushing them farther and farther north. That's why you see more and more sightings in Canada, right? But these Dogmans are like, oh, y'all want the smoke, huh? Y'all gonna put that playground right here? Right here? Okay. Right here?
It's still my spot.
Yeah, exactly. That's still my spot, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
Super
it,
territorial.
Yeah. We think about, we think, we do it to animals stuff all the time, don't we? Perfect example here is like, our new divisions going up where we are. And, we used to be surrounded by kangaroos, and now they're all pockets of herds of kangaroos and stuff like that. So again, they're getting pushed. So, what's to say that they haven't and that is literally what we're encroaching on their territory. And I suppose they may have given a little in the beginning, but now they're just like, nah, this is not going. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, man. And it's crazy, eh?
Yeah.
And it's quite scary to think, right? Yeah.
Well, for sure.
Quite scary to think.
Yeah. Okay,
so let's get into this. So it was 6 a.m., beautiful morning. He started to cast out and caught a few fish straight away. He was super happy. He was like, yay, finally, I'm back into my happy place. This is good. He said it took 10 to 15 minutes in and he heard a twig snap. Didn't worry about it, like the dude's been in the bush forever, right?
Right.
He's a construction worker, he's a fisherman, but he also used to train racehorses. So he said he took a paddle and then he heard something massive stepping in the bush. He goes, I know the sound of a large 400 to 500 kg racehorse in the bush. He said, we used to take the horses out into the bush all the time and teach them not to freak out, right? So he knows what it sounds like when a 400 to 500, half a ton horse animal is walking through the bush, traipsing through the bush. He says this creature was bigger than a horse and bigger than a large kangaroo. He said it was definitely over 400 to 500 kilos. He said he stopped paddling and the creature stopped stepping. It mimicked his movements. He said he realized he was being stalked, and then he realized it was on the same side as his ute. So he goes nearly 1K from the ute, but he still couldn't see it in the bush. He said he figured he'd have to go down to town where there was loads of people. He saw this black thing in the bush. He knew it wasn't something that should be there. He took some photos and then he paddled down a few hundred meters down the river until he realized it was gone and it wasn't following him anymore. He said he stopped and he pulled over to the bank to have a rest and a cigarette.
Right.
And he pulled out his phone and he checked out the photos that he took. He said initially he thought it was a 7-foot dog, and it was a dog in the tree line that he took these photos of, and I've got these photos to share with you as well. He said He said he thought it was about 7 foot, right? He said a few days later, jumped back in his truck and left, and that was fine, not a problem. A few days later, him and his mates went back to measure the bank at the location, and he found that where he took the photos from, there was a massive drop in the bank. And he realized that this thing must have been more like 10 foot.
Wow.
He said there was no trees or branches that he could have been hanging off. He said he had a long snout and pointy ears, and the pictures of it looked like a black Alsatian German Shepherd. Yeah, dog.
Wow.
Dog. Absolutely mental. Yeah, absolutely mental. So that was his last encounter.
That is crazy. Yeah. That is wild.
So since then, he's gone on to do some, a fair amount of radio conversations and tell his story and that sort of stuff. He's published his photos, and they're just, it's mental. It's really, really mental.
Yeah.
And so many connections between Yowies, Bigfoot, Dogman, that mind talk, that telepathic kind of communication. So it takes this idea that they're now supernatural beings versus biological earth-dwelling creatures.
And so here to add into that, there's a theory that's picking up a lot of ground here, is that they're lab grown. And so this guy named Joe Barger, he shot a 10-foot tall dog man in the Manatees National Forest in northern Michigan up here. He was a truck driver. It was trying to come in his window to get him. He got stopped like 6 months later by a state trooper and the Department of Homeland Security. The feds pulled up and sweated him down and said, "You shot our asset." That's what they told him. And they took his gun and they said, "Hey, look, we can make your life real difficult." So for you, you should go study the Joe Barger story, right? And in the United States, and you know why it makes sense. What year did this take place?
Oh, like 2019 or something like that.
Because the United States of America, supposedly, now the supposedly the story goes on that is that something is happening on the inside of our Earth, and that we are breeding these things and sending them into these caves. The ones we're breeding up here are about 10 feet tall. Like the natural Dogman are anywhere between 6 to 7 to 8 feet tall, right? But the ones that they say that they're bred, also they say that the ones that we're creating in the labs have like a lion's mane with them, like a lion's mane. And sometimes they get off the leash and they take off, and that the U.S. military has to go into these forests and try to kill them and hunt them down, right? And they call them, I have a buddy who says he's in contact with these guys. They call them the critter getters, right? They send the special operations guys in there, a team to track these things down, right? And it makes me would think that, because Australia is so, this was Australia, right? It wasn't New Zealand. Was it New Zealand?
Australia. Yeah. Australia.
It's so massive. You know what I'm saying? It is just so massive. And I know that we have U.S. secret military bases in damn near smack dab in the middle of Australia, right? And it wouldn't surprise me if this thing got loose, right? And that
So are you saying that they're lab made, or there's basically versions of them that have been running around, have caught them and then done their own version of it?
So real quick, just to interject in here.
Yeah.
There's actually proof. So no, there are full lab grown ones that don't have the ability to shift, or we'll use the term phase, to phase out of that state. Yeah. But there's also proof coming forward right now that that the original super soldier serum was a werewolf, was a dogman, and that the Germans actually perfected it, and the Germans were using this dogman in World War II, and they got the technique from the Viking berserkers. that it was. I don't know if you're familiar with a Viking berserker, right?
Berserkers, yeah.
It wasn't like these guys would just get really angry. Supposedly these if you go and read the Nordic mythologies about them, they would shed their skin. These Viking warriors, berserkers would do. And there is a forest that you guys should look into called Schwarzwald in Germany, aka the Black Forest. And it's the forest where all the scary kid stories like Hansel and Gretel and the Brothers Grimm stories came out, right? The very first werewolf story ever told was about this guy. His name was, it was in my notes here, I want to tell you. In the 16th century, his name was Peter Stump in that forest, right?
Yeah.
The Black Woods, right, of Germany, right? They're saying that the U.S. knows how to do that now. And so that our super soldiers have the ability to phase into these wolfies, right? So we have, of course, being who we are, we've got both of them, right? But sometimes these things get loose, man. I got nothing to back that up other than conversation and historical data and facts. But you can easily go on to Google, type it in, German super soldiers, and it will say werewolves. It will literally be that the articles were being written that the Germans were big into making these the Luftwaffes, the wonder weapons. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it would make total sense to do this in Australia because no one's looking and there's nothing but land and opportunity out there, right? Here you get a little and to before we go back to turn it back over, we tried to pass a law here in Congress in 2021 or 2022 banning the creation of animal human hybrids to make it illegal, and it didn't pass. The Department of Homeland Security, I made a short about it. It's on my Instagram. What? It didn't pass. The Department of Homeland Security stepped in and said, no, we need to make animal human hybrids in case we want to use pig hearts for transplants. That's literally what they said.
The excuse was for doing transplants.
Yeah. But there's only one problem. The National Institute of Health, NIH, is the government agency for transplants and that stuff. Department of Homeland Security, their jurisdiction is our national park. They're like they're the Men in Black of national parks, right? They shut it down. So right now, it is not illegal in the United States of America to create animal human hybrids and to pay for it with taxpayer money. It's not illegal.
Wow. That has blown my mind.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, and it's and the thing about it too is that I made a comment the other day when I was talking. They don't even try to hide it anymore. Used to, they would try to bury it.
Yeah.
But now they're like, yeah, for pig transplants. I'm thinking like, what? What?
But people will fall for that. That's the thing. You know, you've got what we call the sheep. The sheep will just take whatever they say and they'll take it as truth, and then they'll just carry on with their lives because there's no, there's nothing else there in their world that they're going to see as. And
here's one more. Here's the cherry on top of that pie that I just told you down there. I'm not making this up. Fun fact. Go and look where the first successful publicized cloning ever happened. It was in y'all's backyard, and it was a sheep. It was
Dolly the sheep.
It was a sheep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually remember. I was in Japan when that went down, and it would make perfect sense that we would go down there because. Now, just follow me out. Now, let's nerd out here, ladies. They don't have a Dogman to take a original sample from, right? So when they did finally make one, what would they do with it? They would stamp out as many as possible. They would clone it as much as possible to go do it. And Australia, with no regulations, whatever, and sheep. And when was that? That was what, 94?
20.
Oh my God, Dolly the
years
sheep.
ago?
Oh, no, 30, maybe way longer. Yeah, because I can remember,
Yeah.
because all the boys started calling the sheep Dolly. Come here, Dolly.
Right?
It's a whole different story, that one.
Yeah.
But, about Kiwi boys and their sheep.
Yeah. 30 years.
It gets cold.
Yeah.
It gets cold at night time.
It gets cold out there. Look, man, you love who you love. You know what I'm saying? Bad girl. Stop. See, stop. You're a bad girl. But look, that was 30 years ago. And you know what?
Yeah.
And like, look at that, man. And so, yeah, in 2019, that would make perfect sense. I even made the comment, literally talking last night, is that the legends had always been just the werewolves, right? The werewolves. You didn't really start, at least I didn't. I mean, I'm sure there were people that were deep in the woods, in these bushes for a long time. I didn't start hearing about a Dogman until like over the last, we'll say 5 years actually, to go into like the whole Dogman phenomenon. I just thought it was a werewolf that you would phase in and out and all this. Can't control it, but damn, man, Australia will kill you, man. There ain't nothing. What, man? Wow, Australia is not for the weak.
This is why I was asking about, how are they man-made? I have sightings right back. One of the earliest sightings, where is it? Is in 1847 in Tasmania, from a newspaper article.
So I asked a question on that, and so this is what. So the super soldier thing intrigued me, right? And if you go and look at old black and white German officer photos before World War II really got really crazy, all these officers had these really bad scars on their face, really bad scars, and they would say that these officers would scar themselves on purpose to make themselves look more intimidating. But they all had another thing in common. They all hunted in this black forest, this Schwarzwald in Germany. They all hunted there. And this guy said that scarring is a lie. That's somehow during the process of them becoming to be able to turn into these super soldiers, that scarring came place. Either they would go in there and they would get attacked, and if you lived or whatever, but that scarring was before the ability. So they got the scar before the transformation, and that's why it was there, right? And it wouldn't go through with it, because these things are supposedly timeless. That means the aging process slows down, but they're not immortal. You can kill them. There's a difference. They don't live forever, but they just age slow. So the working theory is that during Operation Paperclip, when we were rounding up these Nazi scientists, we got a couple of these Wolfie boys too, and we had their blood. But until recently, we weren't able to do that replication. And the guys were saying that the lab-grown ones aren't as strong as the original ones that would go out and get attacked and do the other stuff, right? So I don't know. So that was what was fed to me about the whole Dogman super soldier thing. But it wouldn't surprise me. But when you pull that thread though as well, just what you were talking about the earliest sighting being in Tasmania in like 18-something.
1847, yeah.
Because
then again then everything kind of moves north to Queensland and New South Wales. These are our biggest areas of these sightings. So those go back to 1954 and 1910.
Yeah, and so these things were the earliest written ones were on the Sumerian tablets, 17,030 BC or whatever. They were writing about these things. So the originals probably came from the Book of Enoch. They were probably when it talks about the hybridization, that's probably where the original ones came from.
Sure. And also on Tuesday, we talked about, our last episode was about Lemuria and the lost continent of Mu. And the lost continent of Mu is Hawaii, New Zealand, Easter Island, Fiji, right? Down through here, which is said to be Lemuria as well. And within that come stories about Ku, which is the god, dog of war.
Mm-hmm.
That brings into play all of those kind of hybridizations and that sort of stuff as well, because when those, the Atlanteans and the Lemurians had all this technology and all that sort of stuff, there was obviously hybridization going on. And then you've got, like all of the dog gods around the world, that have these special talents.
So, yeah. And it makes perfect sense too. Like, the Earth is a big place, but it is steadily getting smaller. But back in the day, if you wanted to just F off and never be found,
Australia. You'd never be found.
Australia.
Australia, I mean, that's kind of something that I looked into here with like the amount of missing persons.
Yeah.
I don't know. You probably heard of Dean Harrison. He's the guy. He's come out and what was his thing?
Jump in there, Jules.
Talked about
there.
So Mr. Dean Harrison has said he believes people have died as a result of Yowie encounters, but he doesn't actually believe in the dog. But he says he believes there is absolutely no doubt about it. We are taken seriously by some of the authorities, whether it be parks and wildlife, police, different military levels. Lisa, what about? There have been times when we have swapped information about such deadly attacks.
Yeah.
So that was his words when he spoke to Andrew Buck. So, and
hey, it would be really interesting to see, you talked about how these Dogman sightings went from Tasmania, which is the bottom of Australia, all the way up all of a sudden to North Australia. It'd be really interesting to see and build those military installments, right? They are underground dumb bases, deep military underground bases. So there's two of them. There is one over in Cairns or around that area, which is northern, and then there's one over the other side. So it'd be very interesting to see that correlation.
A freaking report dropped today that the United States of America, this came out today, that we have 114 of those on the planet. We have 114 dumbs all over the globe. And I was thinking and supposedly they're all connected by a train. I was like, what? Yeah. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Trains, train tunnels, all the way through them. It's mental when you start looking into it. And even in Australia, where we just go, it's just Australia, it's fine. There are train tunnels connected underground to all of them, and guarantee. And so I'll just throw this out here as well, talking about, lab grown and made. There are talks of birds on the wind of a Section 25, which is North New Zealand, which apparently is a area, and it actually is an area, a Section 25 owned by the Department of Conservation. However, it is off limits. You are not allowed to go there. And word on the street is that they have the Haast eagle, which is the giant extinct eagle, and likely other things.
For sure.
Yeah.
Hobbits.
Right. There's no way New Zealand is left out, right? There's no way New Zealand is left out.
No, especially when we cloned the first sheep, we got all that kind of going,
Here's something fun to you, a little light reading. Do you know the number one place that is slated to survive the event of a global catastrophe is New Zealand?
New Zealand, yeah.
You guys.
Yeah, and do you know why? Because we have a population of around 5 million people. It's possibly 6 million now, but around about 5 to 6 million people. We are totally isolated and we're totally self-sufficient. And this makes us the perfect space to test out a whole heap of shit.
Exactly.
Like like digital currency, immunizations, jabby jab, just everything. We are a test ground. Because if things happen cleanly here, they can roll it out into other larger populations, and it sucks because we have so many sheep. And when we say sheep, we refer to people.
Yeah,
not just the dollies.
Not just the dollies. Wow.
Man.
All right.
Go Jules. Hit us.
All right, baby. So I'm going to get into like a little bit of the Aboriginal side of stuff. So they have what they called, it's called Australia's desert werewolf. It is called the Orinja, Irrinji. It is also referred to as the devil dog or devil dingo. So its primary habit, though, is in sand dunes and the deserts, and they say that they have contact with witches and wizards, which is, I mean, this is kind of folklore going, this years and years ago. They're known to kind of like travel through the sandstorms, where they believe that they manifest like their forms, like they'll lay down maybe as a man and then kind of rise up through the sands as like these giant, like a big bristle muzzle, a tongue, fang jaws, and they're hungry. So this is kind of an Aboriginal lore which goes back thousands and thousands of years. So it's kind of, it's really interesting that side of it. So there's not a lot of paintings and cave drawings and the Maoris and stuff like that. It's basically, if something's tapu, it means that it's not good. You don't kind of go there, or you don't repeat it, or so this is so to paint these, they just didn't do it. So there are very, very few kind of paintings, but these stories come down about these creatures coming through and basically killing people.
And the Aboriginals are the OGs for the verbal pass down of their stories and their knowledge. And it makes perfect sense too. That's not the first time I've ever heard that you don't paint these things, because in Native American lore over here, they don't paint skinwalkers or all these other, they don't none of that stuff. None of that stuff gets written down.
It's so interesting, because our friend Rex over in PNG told us exactly the same thing. He was like, we don't talk about things like that.
Yeah.
You don't go into that stuff. You don't go into that shape-shifting kind of negative entity sort of stuff, because you're just basically attracting them. They'll hear you talking about them. Sure, yeah.
And they'll show up.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Get out of my shower.
Get out of my shower. Exactly.
All right. So the one sighting that I really, really loved, that kind of like gave me the heebie-jeebies. So this was in the Currumbin Valley. So again, Queensland. So where you've got Queensland up the top, you've got New South Wales. On the east coast, kind of going in, you've got all the national parks and, the bushland and stuff there. This is where most of these sightings come from. Yes, we've got a couple in Victoria. I haven't really found anything on the west coast. It's all in this one area where you seem to get like a multitude of these encounters, which are pretty. So Queensland, New South Wales, all around that kind of area. Lisa in the Currumbin Valley, she was driving home from work. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She was about 1 kilometre from home. She came over a hill onto a flat, and then something caught her eye. As she kind of went past, she realized it was standing up on 2 legs, and her thing was like, it was a grey-blue color. And all she could think of was like, oh my God, it's a wolf. And she's just like, in her head, she's going, but we don't have wolves in Australia. Like she was kind of like freaking out a little bit. She looked in her rear vision mirror, and next minute, all she saw was this thing drop to its 4 paws and then started running after her in the car. So she's just like going, oh my God, absolutely terrified of this thing following her. She got into the top of her driveway, which was quite a long driveway, and basically just stuck her hand on the horn and just blasted the horn the whole way down the driveway. So her mum was inside. And so next minute, all the lights come on, and she drove as close as she could to the car. Like her mum came out, the dogs came out, the dogs just started going like absolutely nuts. And she basically just ran inside and was yelling and screaming at everybody to come inside, come inside. It took over like an hour and a half that she speak to her mum to tell her what she saw was this thing like going crazy. And then it kind of went on from there. So this kind of went for almost for over a year. So the second encounter, her husband, stepson, was sitting on the front veranda. They just finished the barbecue. They're about to sit down. It was just kind of getting on dark. So they had kind of like milking sheds just kind of in the distance, about 100, 120 meters. And when they kind of look out onto the land where they were, there was a bit of a hill that kind of came down. So they sat down, and then they saw these like dogs. They thought wild dogs were running down the hill. So these dogs started coming down the hill, started coming towards the house, and like it's a bit unusual. They don't normally come, this kind of close. And then they got to about 120 meters away, kind of beside where the shed was, and they stopped, and they all kind of basically morphed into two legs, and they all stood up. There were like 5 of them, and it was like these giant, it was like literally a pack of giant dogmen. So just standing there, like watching them, and they're just like, So apparently they just picked up all their food and they ran inside and locked all the doors, like pulled all the curtains down. Typical country house, the doors won't lock. Let's just wait and see what happens. We're not going to go out. Her husband was like, I'm going to go out. Don't you dare go out. And then they're sitting in the lounge, basically like absolutely terrified, and they could hear one of them walking around. So this thing just started walking around the house and stuff, and eventually it went. So that was kind of when everything really kind of took off after that. So she never ever saw the pack together again, but there was just one one dogman in particular, she said, that just harassed them for absolutely months. And she said it targeted her stepson.
Sorry, push the right buttons. Sorry. How old was he? Sorry, was he in his 20s?
He was 20, 20-year-old stepson. And this one dogman in particular would constantly stalk around his house and would scratch at his walls, and he would find this thing watching him, just absolutely terrorizing this guy. He would look out a window, and this thing would be looking in his window. And so she also had a 4-year-old son, and he would wake up in the middle of the night and he would, please stop the dog from staring in my window. Now his window was kind of quite high, so like the bottom of the 7 foot. So this dogman, this would like stare at this little boy. So which would be, we're talking about the kids before. Imagine that, this thing. It says like, please make it stop staring through the window.
Connections, Connections, right?
Connections, yeah.
Connections.
So the third encounter that she talks about, which is a big one, was with Kevin. So this is where I literally was just like, oh my God. So it was a bit dark. It was just coming on dark, and he got a phone call. Then he went out of the house. He's talking on his phone, and she's in the kitchen kind of cleaning up, and she saw him kind of walking around on his phone. And then all of a sudden she could hear her husband going, Kevin, get back here now. And Kevin's kind of like on the phone going, oh, you know what? And all she could hear is her husband, like you could hear like the fear, like, Kevin, come back now. And she looked out the window, kind of leaned over to see where Kevin was. So they had a barn. So here was Kevin talking on his phone on one side of the barn, and on the other side of the barn walking out was this dog man. So he kind of was like, oh my God, the son kind of realized. The husband's like, run, and he basically kind of ran kind of towards the house, and the closest thing to him was a window, and he basically flew through a window. She locked the window, they locked the door, and next minute she was face to face with this dog man, like staring her down, like through this window. And she said what got her was the intelligence. She said the hatred, and she just knew that if he got inside, they were all dead. But she knew he could get inside because it would play with the doors and stuff like that. So she knew it could get in, and he just...
Yeah, that's a good no that's a great point right there. What that first of all, that's terrifying. Number one.
Yeah.
Number one, that's terrifying. But that's not the first story that I've heard about how they can't come in your house for some reason. Like if they wanted, obviously, if that thing wanted to get in, it's coming. It's a window. It's coming off its hinges, or the door's coming off, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, like what are these things? You know, like what are they? What rules? I think, man, we're playing with crayons in this world.
I never really connected that before, them not being our. So I mean, you've got that whole empire law. You can't invited. So is it part of what they're trained? How you're saying how they've been hybrid made, that they're not allowed to actually access homes or something? Is that kind of part of the training, or is this just?
It's actually it's not. It's also that rumor about vampires have to be invited in. It's also the same for black-eyed kids. I don't know if you ever heard about that before.
Black-eyed children. Yeah.
Black-eyed children can't come in your house unless you invite them in there as well. Same thing with certain people talk about certain type of like Native American, like, demons or spirit. They call them spirits or whatever.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why they don't talk about it is just in case they say something that they take as an invitation for them to come in their house.
Yeah.
You've never heard of I've only heard of one Bigfoot ever being in somebody's house. One. I've only heard one story. I heard it about 3 weeks ago. I've never heard of a Bigfoot ever going in anybody's house.
I have.
A Bigfoot, right? That's the only one.
There's a ranch that's run by a woman. It's not Skinwalker and it's not Star, whatever it is. It's another one, and she said there's a portal in her lounge, and Bigfoot often comes out of the portal and goes into the forest behind her house.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
it might have been a story on Monsters Among Us or something like that, where she phone called in and said, I've got a portal in my lounge. And I've got a big forest out the back, and Bigfoot often comes through the portal and walks out the back.
Yeah, the one that I heard, this lady was telling, it was live. I was actually at that conference, and she was telling me, she said that she was diagnosed with congestive heart failure, and she woke up one night and a Bigfoot was standing over her bed with his hands over her chest, healing her. That's what she said.
Wow.
Right? I was like, okay, but that's the only time I've ever heard 2 times now of the story of the Bigfoot coming into your house. But I've heard so many stories about, I've heard at least 4 stories about people being in a house in the woods and they could hear the things walking on the roof and the ceilings and on the deck. They could hear them scratching at the sliding glass door, but never came in. And of course they never went out.
Turning the handles.
Shaking the knobs. So I wonder what's that all about.
So then I reckon there's 2 options, right? So number one, if they're like lab grown, military, whatever, then maybe that's a part of their inbuilt kind of, you're not allowed to do the rules or whatever. If you look at like, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Universal Soldier, do not kill human life or whatever, right? So like maybe, that sort of space, they're not allowed to enter into residential dwellings. Okay, sure. And then the other side of that, if there's supernatural, spiritual, interdimensional beings, then Juliet and I talk a lot about this as far as protection goes and that sort of stuff. Entities have the obligation, they must abide by universal laws that are on Earth. Right? They have to. So if you look into, biblical stuff, if you look into, Christian faith or any other faith, they have these rules that say they cannot do A, B, C, and D whilst on Earth. They must do A, B, C, and D. And one of those things is they cannot enter without having an open invitation. And like you said, Joe, that's why people don't talk about them, just in case they say something to inadvertently invite them into being a part of me, or jumping on my shoulder or coming into my house. So I guess it all depends on whether or not you're going from a cryptozoology standpoint or a paracryptozoology standpoint, right? Supernatural versus
hybrid, or the hybrid side, you know, that's
or the military. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Paracryptozoology. That's a great word. That's a 10 peso word right there, man. I love it.
We learned that one a while ago, Juliet? And I was like, what is this? Paracryptozoology? But it really kind of defines where your perspectives are, where your viewpoints are. So I was kind of like, yeah, fair, cool, I get it.
Basically managed to get out of that house. Their lease was up and they moved away. So they kind of moved to another rural area, but her mum stayed in basically the same place around the same town. And so when they would come back to visit the mum, the Dogman would be there. They would see it. Like, she would ask the mum, like, do you see this? No, I'm not acknowledging, just not it. Her stepfather, I think it was just like, yeah, there's stuff out there and we just don't go outside at night. But one night they went to visit mum and then they drove back to their own property and this Dogman followed them the entire way back to their property. So back to their new property. So it was, you know, and that's what she said. She always felt like this one in particular, like, definitely was kind of targeting the stepson more than kind of the rest of them. Like, you know, it would walk around the house and they would hear it, you know, like the scratchings, they would hear door handles going. But, you know, I was saying it never physically came inside. But she was just like, this thing just had like this look, and she said it was just so intelligent and just she knew. It was just like, I'm gonna have you.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of the encounters that they describe them, for the lack of a better word, of very precise nonverbal communication is what they said. It's like it's like words weren't exchanged, but they could just know exactly, like, you know what, you're not worth my time. And it's like, it's just like that to go across in there.
Yeah.
Man, you guys.
So that's So 1847, the first one in Tasmania, Kingaroy, Queensland, 1954, Landsborough, Queensland, 2016, New South Wales, 1980, New South Wales National 90 the national parks in New South Wales. So there were several sightings in this one area between like 1999, around 1999, around Christmas time. There was a lot of sightings. 86, Queensland, more national parks, 1989. So there is just so many, and they all kind of stem from those same areas, like Queensland, kind of like the bushland coming down into New South Wales. So,
and if you were to overlay, like, how interesting would it be to overlay Yowie sightings and, you know, ABC, big cats,
same area,
all being the same.
You know, Currumbin is very well known for, so, you know, so there's all these kind of connections, you know, right down to Byron Bay and Dogman sightings down there as well. So, you know, that's how we talk about, you know, how they're supposed to be connected somehow. So
there's a lot of stories about Bigfoot or Yowies and Dogman being connected. As far as you see a Yowie and you often see a Dogman at the same time, and there's theories that Dogman is Bigfoot's pet or a sidekick, or that Dogman is actually a gatekeeper. He's the gatekeeper of the portal, right. You know, like, so Bigfoot is actually the king of the forest, or, you know, whatever that higher being entity that comes into the forest, and he's the king and everyone does what he's told. Yeah. And then Dogman is the gatekeeper of the portal.
So actually there's a good, that's not a bad theory, because there is a case I'm studying right now in Kentucky about this national forest called the Land Between the Lakes, right? It's basically two massive lakes with, obviously, exactly how it describes, where Bigfoot and Dogman went to war over the territory of that land between the lakes, right? And some people are saying that, no, it wasn't a war. Bigfoots are benevolent by nature, Dogmen are malevolent by nature. Bigfoots keep them in check. If the Bigfoots are the Bigfoots or the Sasquatch are the pure spirits, these are the dark spirits, depending on what type of lore you want to look into. And so whenever these Bigfoot or whenever these Dogmans started getting routed, because supposedly there was a Dogman massacre that took place down there, right? A massacre, right? I'm just now looking into it. But the fact of it is that in this area in Kentucky, people got slaughtered by what they thought of as wild dogs, right? And I have never heard of wild dogs slaughtering people. I've never heard of it before, right? I mean, I've heard of wild dogs in Texas.
There was one village, and I need to. Now this is over in like Romania.
Scotland?
Was it Scotland? No,
Scotland.
Basically, like all these dogs, these giant dogs, and whatever, they just all got together and basically started attacking everybody in this village.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm talking about a different one. Sorry. Yeah. I thought you meant one dog, but yeah, pack of dogs.
And that's why you need 30-round clips. Bang, 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 bang. Bang, 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 bang. No, that's amazing. Wow. I got to tell you, man, we're running out of time. Before we wrap up, though, I could talk to you guys for hours. So obviously, you'll be back when the permit recycles and we get to come back. But I got to tell you, my closing thoughts, man, is that, man, Australia is literally, in my mind, right now. I've been to several places in Australia, never into the mid parts. I've been to the casino in New Queensland, or I've been to Queensland or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
I've been to bars in Brisbane, but I've never really went out into like. But that is literally, and New Zealand is a lot like this too. New Zealand is like a place where time really hasn't touched. You know what? If that makes sense. If people are watching this, and people are watching this show, if you've never been to Australia, that's the closest thing to a dinosaur. Jurassic Park, in my mind, would be Australia. And it wouldn't surprise me, man, that we just scratching the surface on the Earth is changing. In my opinion, all this information is coming through or whatever. And also, I think that's why they try to press down so hard. It's you can't anymore. It's just too late. The information is just pouring out of the sides. You can't stop it anymore, right? Yeah. But man, Australia is not for the weak. Like everything down there will kill you, right? Packs of dog. Like,
I'm always so surprised when we look down a different avenue for something fine. Like, oh wow, something else to be in the bush.
Yeah, right.
It's just there is Australia, you know, and you know, we were talking about it before. It's like the Australian animals and everything here. Everything's got this really angry feel about it. Everything's angry and wants to hurt you and wants to kill you, basically. Yeah. So it's not like you go, oh, look at the cute little koala. No, the koala you up.
Yeah.
You know, the kangaroos can kill you here. Yeah. You know, we've got the cassowaries, you know, the giant bloody dinosaur birds. There's so much here. You know, so it's like, does that kind of play into the creatures? Is there something here that plays in make so do they feel like they need to protect themselves because it's such a hostile place?
So it's funny. Fun fact, Enigmites watching the channel. The only reason why koala bears aren't vicious is because they literally eat eucalyptus leaves all day. And if you know anything about eucalyptus leaves, it basically keeps them hammered all day, right? So if those things weren't tuned up all the time, you would be seeing these guys come out of trees with this big little claws. I saw.
Yeah. That's when they don't get the good eucalyptus.
Yeah.
Yeah, they turn into drop bears, right?
Yeah.
That's where the legend has come from. If they were not high all the time and absolutely smashed off their face, they would turn into drop bears and they would drop on you and eat your flesh eat your brains.
Rip your face off. The funniest thing I ever saw was two male koala bears trying to see who was the alpha so they could mate. And they were in the street, and it looked like this two dudes hugging, man. Like, yeah, she's mine. She's mine. Bro. It's like, so they were just leaning back and forth. And they were both on hind legs. I was like, oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. Koala bears are delicious. They're so cute. We love them. Apart from their big claws.
Just in the barbecue way, people.
I don't eat every animal I come across, but I did eat Steve, and he was delicious.
That's it.
We're not allowed to talk about Steve.
Steve's gone. Ladies, man, it's always nightmares coming tonight, but tell everybody where they can find you.
Cool.
Well, you can go to cryptidwomensociety.com. We have memberships available now. You could come and be a pathfinder or a truth seeker. Come and join the society. It's a beautiful little community. It's women only, unfortunately, Joe. We could probably dress you up and get you in if you wanted to, but
borrow my mom.
You know,
show up in drag.
Yeah, 100%. It's an amazing supportive community for women to really help women share their stories, get some confidence in this industry, and start kind of getting involved and restore a bit of the balance to our amazing communities. And man, have we got some amazing women doing interviews with us. We've got some Shadow Talk quickies coming up, which are 15-minute interviews. And maybe Joe might join us on Men's Day Wednesdays.
Wednesdays. Getting my Speedo ready.
It. Oh my God. Yeah. We're on Instagram.
Dungeon Talk.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Dungeon Talk. We do actually have a dungeon, which is pretty choice. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on TikTok. You can find us everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah. And can we say a giant thank you to Joe for having us? And also, can we say a giant well done to you, my friend? Like,
thank you.
We are so privileged to be a part of your journey and to watch all of the amazing work that you're doing and the content that you're putting out and the truth that you're putting out. And we're so stoked that we get to be a part of that.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
You're doing great.
So excited, you guys. I mean, like I said, you guys were like one of the very first guests I ever had on. And so, yeah. That's amazing. You're not going anywhere. I got you now. You know what I'm saying? So you guys are
you're giving me too. Like, honestly, if you watch some podcasts I've had, and we are going to be discussing this soon, some of it, because talking about your bloody reptilian aliens and other things.
Oh, sure. Joe's joining us on our Instagram live on next week, the next one coming up, and we're talking Hollow Earth.
Hollow
Earth. Man.
So, yes. So, guys, highly recommend their channel at the Cryptid Women's Society. Also, it's at Cryptid Wild. Both of them I'm following. So if you need to look for them, click my thing to go in there and find it. Hit the description down there. As well, in the comments, leave a question for Lisa and Juliet. If you're a woman and you want to get into the cryptid stuff, the wild stuff, go check it out. Before I go, I actually got a surprise for you too. Right, I'm saving this because I do stay pretty busy, but I do jump in and I catch your guys' usually your replays. I go in there and I catch the replays if I can't catch in and do it. And I happen to notice that I've noticed it now a couple of times that you guys both are rocking the Mothman shirts, right?
Oh yes.
I've actually got an on-site excursion where I am going to go to the site of the Mothman incident. I'm going to live you guys up and I'm going to grab y'all some swag from the spot and I'm going to send it. I'm going to mail it off to you down there. So we're going to we'll work out the details. It's going to be around sometime in September. I'm going to go to that area. There's a big silver statue out there. I'm going to go around. We'll do a live.
You got to go kiss his butt.
Kiss the Mothman's butt. Well, all right. So be ready for that. So anyways.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I think how cool would that be, right? Because for me, like, it's only like a couple hours for me, but I'm thinking like, man, that would be like something you guys could be like, hey, look, this is a Mothman shirt from the area, the 2 blocks away where it went down, right?
I I tell you what, totally on our bucket list, and to get a wee foot in the door with
Yeah.
you would be so exciting.
I
That
got
was
you.
so cool.
I got you on that. If you stuck around this long, you know you're our type of losers there. So you know how to do. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Leave a comment for Juliet and Lisa. I do not care what you do with that bell one bit. Give them a follow on Instagram. And if you're a female and you want to get down to other females, hang out. These are the girls for you. All right. Say bye, ladies.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. See you later.
And we're out.
Subscribe now and turn on the notifications to join us on this extraordinary journey into the unknown.